Perfect. Okay, so what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Molly Sarber, and I live in Lake Forest, Illinois.
And what initially started your interest in mental health?
We have some family history on both sides of my family and my husband's family. I have two daughters who both have been diagnosed with a mental illness. I think I probably have some depression slash anxiety myself. I see it everywhere. I think that more people today than less, know someone with a mental illness or have been touched with it personally by a loved one or someone that they know. Uh, and we have very close personal friends of ours whose son died by suicide last year. So it's a very close topic to my heart.
And is that sort of what sparked your interest in becoming an advocate for mental health? And how long have you been doing it for?
Yes, well, again, having two daughters, both who have been diagnosed with mental illnesses, it's been a long journey. My oldest started, the signs of her depression and anxiety were there in seventh grade. And at that time, though, she was, 12 or who knows what, and she really didn't understand what mental illness was to begin with. And so she was not interested in getting treatment from professional people at that time, which, was unfortunate. Um, and my younger daughter, when she was diagnosed with her anxiety, she started taking medication and it worked beautifully for her. But interestingly, she wanted to kind of wean herself off of her medication while she was in high school, and she did do that. So I was just learning, better coping skills, and so it's just been a different path for both of my kids, and as a mother,
Sure.
you know, and I think going through what I went through with my older daughter and the struggles that she had, I think I had some PTSD myself from that experience. And so I kind of got involved with this organization, Pause for Patrick, that I know we'll talk about, but I feel like my work with that sort of woke me up from my PTSD and brought me back to sort of myself from before. And I'm very, passionate about trying to,
Yeah.
help end the stigma and improve the way the world views mental health in general.
For sure. And do you think that, I know 12 is kind of an age where kids will get wrapped up in social media. Do you think social media had any impact on Caitlin and her idea of not to seek treatment?
Absolutely. I think that for my generation of parents, we were sort of our kids were the first generation to really have like the iPhone and all of its glory. And so growing up with, like, she was in middle school with that app that was like Ask FM,
Yeah.
these anonymous sites that people could use. There's all sorts of apps that people can change the way they look, and filters and all these things that I think that impacted her version of her self-confidence, and even just the way she sees how she looks. Some of her artwork that she does, I think, is sort of a reflection of that, but it absolutely I believe it has everything to do with a lot of that. Yeah.
And did she use art as sort of an outlet to sort of get away from that and to express herself, or did it have any relationship to her mental health?
Well, I mean, I feel like a lot of her artwork that she did was reflective of sort of some of what she was feeling or experiencing. I don't know that she would articulate it that way necessarily, but as her mom and knowing what she was going through and knowing how, just the struggles that she has, I feel like a lot of her photography and a lot of the makeup that she uses and that sort of thing, like, it was both an expression of her artistic, vision, but also I think a little bit to do with just social media and, like, what, I don't know, like changing your appearance, hiding your appearance, or not really showing your true face. I don't know. That's how I
For
interpret it.
Oh, for sure. And especially with these days with the apps like Facetune and all the different apps where you can completely distort your body into something that's totally different from what you actually look like. It can definitely be hard growing up in that environment, whether you like it or not. Like our generation is growing up in that. So it can definitely take a toll on all the adolescents that are going through it right now. So going back to what
Uh-huh.
you talked about with Pause for Patrick, what is Pause for Patrick and what is the goal of it?
So Pause for Patrick was started by a good friends of ours, the Romer family here in Lake Forest, and it was diagnosed with depression and anxiety.
Oh wait, I'm not sure I think it froze.
And I love talking to therapists. He didn't really like the side effects of medication. And and I think that's a huge part of how kids don't get the treatment they need. So, but animals were always like the thing that he felt his true self with. They provide unconditional love and support. There's all these therapeutic benefits to even just seeing a picture of an animal, or so that we all know, if anybody, for people who have animals, we know that how much they provide us with support that's different than any human can. Pause for Patrick's, our mission is to connect young people who are living with mental illness with emotional support animals and therapy dogs to aid them with their mental health. And so when we say young people, it's kind of middle schoolish age to up to about 26 is sort of our primary sweet spot. But a lot of our clients come to us because their parents maybe heard about us. So a variety of ways that people connect with what we're doing, and we can help kids we can do from start to finish. If somebody's wanting to get their own pet that they have never had before, we can help them from the beginning of that to the end of that. We have a couple therapists who are part of our board volunteer organization, who will basically screen kind of the applications and verify that there's a mental illness there. Some people already have a pet and they are wanting to live off campus in an apartment, let's say at school or in a dorm even. There are laws that protect you or people to allow for pets to live with them. And so we have volunteers, or we call them wish granters. And so it's basically a case manager who will take the case and handle whatever the needs are from the start to the finish.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, just sort of to take that one last piece off the plate of whoever it is that is either, if it's a young adults and that's something they don't have to try to figure out for themselves, we can help them with it. Or if it's a parent with a younger kid, that's just one less thing that they have to try and worry about.
For sure.
And we provide the funds to make it all happen. So if we help a client from start to finish, we basically are granting them about $1,000.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
$500 usually will go towards the animal that they're choosing. We do prefer to use animals in rescue shelters where we can, because we want to help. It's kind of a mutual beneficial
both sides
partnership.
for sure.
And then we also provide $500 at the moment, really, for training for the animal after the fact, and we help partner them up with trainers in their areas or whatever to make sure that they can have a well-behaved animal, because that's sort of all that's required to be considered an emotional support animal. We are currently in the process of trying to, we'd like to increase that amount of money that we can give to people to help with additional training, because of course, with some of the laws changing about flying with pets and different things, to receive this sort of be considered a service animal, you need a higher level of training, and sometimes that takes longer and more money. So each client is handled on a case-by-case basis. And so we don't, it depends on the needs of the person. Some of them don't need our financial help, but some of them do. And we're currently helping, I think we have we have different people that we've helped in like 12 different states. We're
Oh
not
my
just,
gosh, that's
yeah,
crazy.
we're not just local. And the way we're set up as a volunteer board, I mean, we have one of our board members is based in Colorado.
Okay.
And we're trying to create a junior board, and we want to be able to have kids who are in college like you, people like that, to kind of still be able to participate and help us, grow and kind of build awareness around all of this for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then is there like a specific guideline that the animal has to be like in a specific frame that the animal has to be in order to be identified as a service pet, or could you just go to the shelter and pick one?
So if you're going to a shelter to get a pet, it depends on the pets there, and it depends. Some people want to get a puppy and whatnot. So, but apparently I guess there's no actual like legit certification requirement for a service dog. Like you don't have to. It's not like there's an agency out there that has to like give you a card telling you that your dog is a service animal. They are supposed to be, there's a certain kind of training though, like they need to be, they are not to bark. And so it's just a more strenuous level of training, I think, that they are kind of, and then they are supposed to have a vest. I think if it is a service animal, they're supposed to sort of wear a specific kind of a vest or something when you take them into buildings and things like that.
Yeah. And then do you mind just reiterating what the beginning part of what Paws for Patrick is? I think the Wi-Fi sort of cut out a bit. So just why it started.
Yeah, so Patrick Romer was a good friend of ours and our friend's son, and he had died by suicide in May of 2020, just before he was going to graduate from Lake Forest High School. He was young in middle school when he was first diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and was not a kid who really wanted to talk to a therapist, also didn't like the side effects of medication, but the love and unconditional support that his animals always gave to him was very real. And so the Romers wanted to create this foundation in his memory, and we really believe in the love and the therapeutic benefits of animals. And so this was sort of, this is basically how we got started.
And then would you say that when you were growing up, was mental health very much stigmatized as it is today, or was it a little less prominent?
It's definitely changing, I think, a lot. When we were doing this last May, when we hit the 1 year anniversary of Patrick's passing, and also Mental Health Awareness Month. So we had a big campaign throughout town, as you probably remember, called kind of hashtag Turn Our Towns Green, which is a signal for mental illness. And so we had ribbons up everywhere and all of these things. We had this video campaign on Instagram and stuff. And I ran into a woman who's around my age in the parking lot out at Sunset one day, and she said, "Gosh, do you remember when we were younger and how nobody would ever say the C word for cancer?" And this is kind of a little bit like that. And I kind of hadn't thought of it that way, but she's right that had been that way a long time ago. And of course now, everybody, there's no stigma attached to cancer whatsoever. But I think it's changing rapid, like it is changing. Oprah Winfrey, put together a TV show with Prince Harry that was on Apple TV that was all about mental illness. And I feel like with someone like her and him, with the level of, celebrity that they have, that's going to change the game about how people view mental illness and talk about it. But as my daughter would say, Caitlin would say, like, I think with kids in particular, she still thinks that there's definitely a stigma among her peers. And so I don't, that's a whole different thing. And being my age, not someone your age, like I probably view it all very differently. And so
for sure,
I think that's a challenge that we still have, and we need to kind of keep working on it.
For sure. And I know the idea that mental health is such a broad topic, it can embody so many different things. But to you, what specifically sort of defines mental health, and what initially comes to mind when you hear the term?
Hmm, good question. I mean, there's a lot of things with mental health. I think that everybody, especially with COVID, has understood what it feels like to live with anxiety. If they never knew what that felt like before, it's a little bit like, not having any feeling of like that sense of control.
For sure.
So I think everybody, we all struggle, or I think we all go through days where we aren't feeling like our best all the time. But I think that for people who can't function properly during the day, get through the day in a kind of healthy way, that's mental health and mental illness. I think there's a difference. There is genetics to it, that there are definitely biological and hereditary components to
For sure.
depression and anxiety and a lot of these things. And there can also be some situational mental health, such, like I said, I think I had PTSD,
Yeah.
which came on as a result of kind of going through what I went through with
For sure.
Caitlin. Um, but to me, one of the biggest and important parts of trying to help break the stigma, and what I've talked to Franzi and Pause for Patrick about, is just changing the way we talk about it and some of the words
For
that we
sure.
use. Because in the beginning, we were saying mental health issues. We were calling it an issue. And so I said, I personally think we always should call it an illness. It's not an issue. It is an actual
I
illness.
agree.
Yeah. And I think that that's important, that we differentiate, that we're very consciously making that choice to call it an illness. It's a lifetime illness, and it's
Yeah.
not curable. It's treatable, as we know. But I mean, you have to be willing to seek the treatment. And
For sure.
nowadays, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I found a statistic in the beginning of my time at Pause for Patrick, as we were getting started, some research, and it said that the average length of time from the onset of mental health symptoms to treatment
Yeah.
is 11 years.
Oh my gosh.
And that
That's what
blew me away.
So I found a similar statistic that the World Health Organization talked about, and it was that in 2021, only 45% of people received treatment for their mental health. So it definitely, which was just crazy, because I thought that it would just be so much higher, because there are, like, I know that in my classes here, people have come to talk in the first few days about what to do if you need help, if your workload is too much, if you're struggling and don't know who to talk to. Like, people make all these sources so available, but still the statistic is so low of people actually receiving treatment and acknowledging that that is something that needs to be treated.
Well, and when I found that statistic, I could actually I said to some people, I'm like, I understand why it's 11 years, because like with Caitlin and Patrick, you're 12, 11, 12, 13,
Yeah.
whatever age you are in middle school, and you're too young to understand what mental illness is.
For sure.
So you don't understand that that's what's happening. You don't want to think that there's something wrong with you. You just want to be like everybody else, because you're just
For
trying to
sure.
fit in. So kids don't want to see a therapist. Then if you finally get them to agree to see one, finding a therapist who that person will actually connect with and feel comfortable talking
sure.
to is really difficult. And if you try one and it doesn't work, and you get them to go to see a second one and they still don't think it works, then it's like, and then they're just like, no, forget it, I don't want to do that.
For sure.
And then with the medicine, like, their bodies are growing and they're changing. And so trying to find the right medication at the right dose and the right combination of things is you start and you stop, and it takes time. And so it takes a long time to, even if your child or person is willing to even do it. And then I think with the insurance coverage in our country, so much of this is not covered.
For sure.
Which is kind of really the base the base of what is wrong with how our country handles and treats mental illness. We're set up in a way that, like, bad things have to happen before something anybody's willing to really help. Yeah. And a family can go bankrupt trying to, like, secure the right treatments for a kid.
For sure.
These things are not there's a lot of steps you have to take, but it's the time is going clicking, and you're seeing your child suffer. And, and it makes sense to me that it's 11 years if anyone's even willing to get the help. So that's why I think with Pause for Patrick, adding the love of an animal into the treatment plan, you still have to go and seek those professional avenues with a therapist or with medication, but having the love of an animal, like, added in during that time, I think
Makes it so
is
much
just,
easier.
yeah. I mean,
For
Steve
sure.
Romer, Patrick's dad, said he feels like what this is doing is just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And, I don't think he's wrong, actually. Like, maybe that is a little bit what we're doing, but it's like better to have the Band-Aid than no Band-Aid. It's
Yeah,
like,
then just have the scab bleeding, like bleeding out. So, and I
yeah,
definitely think that a person's relationship with their dog or with their pet is so much more different than with a human. Which, so I think it's so important that, and I think it's so cool how you guys took like in the animal route more than like, oh, we have so many out sources of therapists and people we can go to, but took like such a unique route and did animals, because that's someone I've never met someone who doesn't like love or have an animal they love so much and have such a unique and special relationship with. So I think that's so cool.
it's amazing what they created, and in such a short time too, and the impact it's already having is really pretty remarkable. And um, the therapy dog side of it too. I mean, besides just helping to actually place animals in with people at home or wherever, but for some people, they can't have an animal, or they're scared of animals, or they just don't have the time to take care of an animal. So having a team of therapy dogs and handlers who are able to like go out and do some meetings in people's homes with them or at their therapist's office. Obviously we bring them into schools too. We didn't have that part of our organization kind of fully going at the beginning because of COVID, obviously, but
Yeah,
it's kind of a blessing that was the case, because we were getting everything sort
learning
of
experience
scaled
for
up.
sure.
But now that COVID things have sort of changed or whatever, our therapy dog side of things has been just, gangbusters, lots of requests. We are trying to find more therapy dogs and handlers to join our team, and all of that. So that's another really great way for, and even we want to have with our therapy dogs that they have their own handlers, but we're actually trying to partner with some of the young people to have them come along sometimes to help be
Oh,
like
that's so cool.
a third person who help can be like just kind of, yeah. And it helps them feel like a sense of self-worth and, giving back.
For
And
sure.
that's always important, I think, too, for people who are feeling a little mentally stressed.
And do you think that the person and the dog, does that sort of relationship kind of, is it the same as like how you talked about earlier with the therapist and the person? Like if they don't match, you have to try again, and so you need to find one that sort of fits. Is that relationship the same with the dog versus the person?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you do need to be careful about matching a person with a dog. I mean,
Yeah,
um, and that was hard in the beginning, because especially if you can't go into the animal shelters because of COVID and different things, we couldn't. That's a process, and so yeah, we don't just pick any animal and send it off to a
yeah,
person. So there is
for
that,
sure.
it can take time. And we've interviewed some of our clients that we have helped, and one of them in particular, I think her advice was, be patient, because it might take a little longer to find that animal that's the right animal for you, but like it's out there and you'll get
It's
to it.
worth
So
it
yeah,
for sure.
that's a good question, because you're right. Yes, that's important.
And then what advice would you give people, just everyday people, on how to handle a difficult situation? What healthy coping mechanisms would you suggest? Because I know some people go to more unhealthy coping mechanisms such as alcohol or drugs. So what are some sort of more healthy ones that you would suggest?
Well, that's always a good question, because it's probably different for everybody. And I know when people
For
I
sure.
think young people in particular don't like a therapist trying to say, do these breathing exercises or
Yeah,
do yoga. I mean, I think you have to be open to understanding that those things can actually work. But I definitely think exercise of any form is always very important, and just healthy for everybody. It doesn't have to be strenuous exercise, but walking and taking walks out in nature, I think, is super important. Just
for sure.
being present and like kind of paying attention to your surroundings and unplugging from things for, an hour or something like that, that can be super useful. I mean,
For
I kind
sure.
of stopped watching the news personally, because I'm like, it's all really bad news. And I don't,
That's what that's what my mom says too. My mom doesn't watch the news because it just sort of like it's all negativity. So I mean, that's not a nice way to start your morning.
yeah,
But so kind of
I do.
leading
I
in,
started kind of listening to some calming music when I make my
yeah,
coffee personally. Music is a really, I think, helpful tool.
For sure. And
And
just
it
even
doesn't
or a
have to be like pop
podcast
music. It
too.
can be whatever music you like, but music
Yeah.
gets energy, it can make it
Yeah.
helps definitely.
I also love, I know my friends and I will sometimes, like, if we're ever feeling anxious or stressed, we'll go on a walk and listen to a podcast, which is something that's helped us before too. I know a lot of my friends have started to use that. One of my friends introduced it to me and I loved it because I just liked walking by myself, but also it kind of felt like you were having a conversation with someone at the same time, just not saying anything. So I thought that was really helpful too.
Yes, and podcasts are huge now. So
Yes.
I'm a dinosaur at my age. So like, I'm learning a lot myself, but I know that podcasts are like the thing now. And I mean, like, by the time I catch up with the podcast, it'll be something new.
It'll be something different, skipping on to the
Totally.
next. But what solutions might you offer to people struggling with their mental health but do not want to seek treatment or don't know where to start? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Well, I mean, I think that the most important thing is just having one person in your life that you feel like you can trust and talk to. And sometimes it's hard. I think if it doesn't have to be like your family member necessarily. Sometimes, the relationship between a mom and child or dad, and like, it's not always productive.
Sure.
But having at least one trusted person in your life that you feel like you can talk to, and who will support you like through anything and can help be an advocate for you, is important. So like, and it doesn't have to be like a friend. Like, I think sometimes having like an adult, like somebody's, I don't know, just anybody in your life, but,
For sure.
And also having like, I don't know. So if you don't know how to start.
Just
Yeah.
sort of how to seek treatment or where would the best place to start be?
Where would the best place to start? I mean, I guess it kind of depends on like your age and when, some of that stuff. So, I think for people in college at this point, like, their health centers on campus, of course, like, but depends on your campus. Some of them are so
For
big
sure.
and it's like intimidating to try to figure out how to do that. I don't know. It's maybe a teacher if you have a teacher that you feel like
A trusted adult
someone who you feel like sort of sees you and
for sure.
is open to, having a conversation. I think that's the hard part though. If you're struggling and you feel unsure of yourself and all of that, it's hard to feel brave enough to like say anything to someone.
And admit it, for sure.
Yeah.
And I know that something
journaling, I don't know.
Yeah, journaling. My mom loves to journal. She definitely has raised us in just to express your emotions, not hold them in. And journaling can just be so helpful because you're writing it out, but you don't necessarily need to say it to someone, which I think is great. But something that's helped me is I started going to see a therapist in Lake Forest over the summer, and I kept up with her here, which has been so nice just to know that I have like a familiar face and someone to talk to, because I was so nervous about having to go and like find a random building and meet someone new and having to re-explain like all the situations that I'm worried about and everything when someone who like I'm so comfortable talking about, and who, when I had gone to see her, I was like, oh my gosh, finally someone understands exactly how I feel. So it's such a relief to be able to talk to someone like that. So I definitely think it's so important too, to just keep in touch and really, once you do find someone who you connect with, really keep them around, even if you are so many states away.
Well, that's one of the benefits of COVID, is that you can now do the telemedicine. And I think especially if you find someone at home that you can, and it's almost nicer to be able to do a Zoom appointment.
For sure.
Then you don't have to take the time to get in the car and all the things. So totally agree.
Yes, it's been so nice. And I find it also fascinating that society has such an extensive impact on mental health in regards to seeking treatment. What's your take on this? I know we talked about both of them kind of individually, but what about just kind of if you combine the two, and the idea that society does the stigma society puts on mental health, and then in regards to seeking treatment?
Well, it's sort of interesting, again, being my age. My mom and dad are 76 now, and my dad is actually a doctor. He's a general surgeon. And so, but he went to medical school at a time when they were not teaching any of these things. Okay. So he, in a way, doesn't believe that mental illness is actually a disease or an illness. Okay. And it's interesting, given that he's the father and grandfather of a lot of kids who
Yeah,
have mental illness, and his reaction or approach to it is tricky. So one thing that I learned going through the therapy I did was that helped me a lot was that, if I keep in mind that everyone is doing the best that they can, and then it's like
each and
dot, dot,
every
dot
day,
in that moment,
for sure.
it like helps a lot. Because so like I know that my mom and dad, like, they love us and they want to support us, and but I don't have to feel mad about the way they, say things or the advice they give to me. Like a lot of it is just, it's their generation. It was how
For
they were
sure.
raised. And, like me, I mean, my kids probably think I'm a dinosaur and that I don't understand anything and all that. But, and that's probably true. But if you need to just be able to be mindful of the fact that, like, I was raised at a different time. And so
For
my
sure.
values might be different. But it's okay that we can still see things differently and still communicate about them. And it's not like my way is the only way or your way has to be the right way. It's
Yeah,
like,
your way or my way or the highway type thing. And
yeah.
so is there a specific way that your dad like views mental health, or how does he view it from his generation? Like, how is it different from the way that we view it now?
Well, for sure. I mean, grandparents at that age, like, that was never talked about.
Okay.
And it was not, treatment was not widely sought, so
Okay.
like, and even for my age, I think one of my sisters definitely struggled. And as a family, we really didn't support her the way that she should have been supported, like the way people do now.
For
So,
sure.
I mean, it's definitely come a very, very long way. But with Pause for Patrick back in May, I was like, oh my gosh, Major League Baseball during the World Series, during the seventh inning stretch, like, they have a moment in the stands where everybody stands up and holds up a sign for someone that they love who has had breast
Oh
cancer
my
or
gosh, that's
cancer.
amazing.
And it, like, gives me chills and tears and everything else.
For
It's
sure.
spectacular. And I was like, and why are we not also doing this for mental illness? Because
For
every
sure.
single person in that stand could also stand up with the sign for someone that they love who has a mental illness. So, we have a lot we can still do. And there are a lot of professional athletes who are now starting to
For
share their
sure.
own stories
Be
and be much
advocates of
more
it.
vocal about it. So, it's getting there, but it's the politics, I think, is another big piece of this. And, like, again, the policies and the um, health insurance is a huge piece that, that's,
For sure.
I don't like politics. I don't enjoy talking about it. And
Yeah,
I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. But,
for sure.
it's really almost criminal the way our country treats mental illness.
For sure. And especially I have an aunt who is schizophrenic. And what I always think about, so I used to really struggle with just like homeless people and just sort of seeing homeless people on the street. I just felt so sad, but also I was so young, so I just didn't really understand. And then when my mom told me, she said, oh, like, well, because I would see like a man talking to himself or yelling at himself. And so my mom told me, she said, well, your aunt, if we didn't like support her and give her the therapies and the doctors that we need, she could be one of these people who don't have a home and don't have a safe, sheltered place to go. And I just think that it's so sad seeing that's just something I really remember, because she told me that when I was so young, and I still remember it to this day, because I think it's just so important to realize that, like, everyone, even if it's a small thing, is just you have anxiety, that's still something that's so prominent, and that it's like doing something for yourself. That's what my mom talks about to it, going to see a therapist, being on medication. I was just put on medication this summer, and she was telling me, she said, it's doing something for yourself. It's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about. It's something that is going to help you so much, but also it's self-care. You're doing something for yourself. So that's just like a different take that I then was like, oh, I should embrace this, because I'm practicing self-care, just like going on a walk or putting down my phone. It's just something that, so I think that sort of shifting the mindset of it is definitely something that our country as a whole should focus on moving, because I think that once we shift our mindset, we'll be able to sort of look at mental health in a new perspective and look at it as something to, like, not embrace, but sort of embrace, and just realize that everyone is going through things that you may not see on the first peel of the onion. You haven't gotten into the core part of them yet, and so
Right.
you're not going to see it. It's not visible in everyone, but your neighbor could be struggling with anxiety or have a specific disorder. So I just think that if we shifted our perspective, that would be so helpful.
100%. And I think Caitlin, and like you, if your mom was kind of saying it's okay to take medicine, like,
For
if
sure.
you were
Exactly.
resistant to it at first, thinking I don't need that or whatever, but it's people take medicine for everything. And
Exactly.
there's no shame in that. There should be no shame in that. And you know, people have diabetes, they take medicine. It is self-care. It's, you know, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care or be present or be available in any other place in your life,
Or to
really.
help anyone else too. If I mean, if you don't believe that like seeking treatment or that being like there, you are unable to be there for someone else if you don't personally take care of yourself and take care of your mental health, and believe that if you had mental health issues that you would seek, or that you would seek treatment, you know,
Right.
and you can't be there for someone else if you don't believe that yourself. So I think that's
Right.
definitely super important too, because it can be hard if someone, one of my friends told one of my friends that she was suffering with an eating disorder, and my friend had no idea what to do. She was so, and she ended up going to Croya, which is a community youth group in our
Right.
town, to go to, because we had learned from such a young age, go to a trusted adult, go to a trusted adult, because at some point it does get so big. If you do choose to go
Yeah.
to a friend as your trusted peer, it does just get a little bit too big for you on your own to handle, and that's when you can go to a trusted adult, just like we've learned since elementary school and since middle school, that that's just such a safe outlet that you'll usually always have in your life.
Yeah, and we should mention also that LEAD, which is based here in Lake Forest, it's a national organization, but they have a text to tip hotline
Okay.
now, and it's nationally functional, and that's an anonymous, you know, way to be able to text something in, and you can get a therapist um, right away or whatever. I don't know
For sure.
exactly how it works, but that's a great. I mean, the fact that they have that's up and going
It's
now.
amazing.
And with kids, I think too, texting is, you know, maybe more comfortable than
For
calling
sure.
someone. I don't know, but that's a thing that we should promote more.
And then do you think social media as of right now does have a positive or negative impact? I know we sort of talked about it earlier, but what do you feel the relationship is between social media and mental health? Do you feel as though it has an impact on whether people struggling with mental health will receive or seek treatment? Or do you think it has a little bit less of an impact as something where if you're like face to face with the person and you're talking to someone about it?
I think social media has kind of gotten, you know, we all are recognizing how much more mental illness there is, I think, in the world, and especially with, I think, you know, what was the documentary that was made about sort of social media um, on Netflix? I forget what it's called now.
Was
I
it about
mean,
the two different girls? Was it about two girls? I know I saw one about the two different girls. One lost her life to suicide because of the social media and mental health.
no, it was sort of I forget the name. I'll look it up and text it to you later.
Perfect.
But it's a bunch of people who actually worked in the tech industry and helped create a lot of the apps and the things that we use all on our phones, and
For sure.
they specifically talk about and show you how they manipulate your data and information to kind of keep you engaged and to keep you.
Yeah,
It's fascinating, actually. So I think social media still can be dangerous. I mean, there's a lot more apps and sites and Instagram and all the things where people are trying to actually do positive posts and content
for sure.
about mental illness, and that's really great too. Um, I mean, I think it depends on the person, obviously. So I do still
Definitely.
think like, you know, all these Facetune apps and things like that, where people are changing their appearance, is really hard for girls in particular.
100%. And just like the idea that someone can completely alternate their life
Yeah.
through the phone. I mean, it's just crazy, and just show that they don't have any struggles. They're living in like a perfect world, perfect mindset, never have off days. And I think that I've seen on social media recently in this past year, and definitely through the pandemic, it's definitely made like bigger influencers open up a bit and just kind of talk about like, okay, yeah, so I did have an off day today, or I know some came out that they were struggling with eating disorders, which I think is so important. And I hope that more influencers keep doing it so then people understand that no one's life is perfect. No one lives in this fairy tale world where you
Right.
have like the perfect body, the perfect house, the perfect everything. So I definitely think it's something that impacts a lot of, especially younger adolescents' mental health, because they don't know any better. They're seeing something and don't know to think about, oh, well, you can use this app, or this is not real, you know? So from a 12-year-old's mind, I know when I was on, I said, oh my gosh, this girl's so pretty. She's so cool. She has all these nice clothes, and it's just
Right.
not real. That's just
Right. Well, and
completely.
especially I think living in Lake Forest and growing up here, I think
For sure.
you know, people here have, there's a lot of kids who have a lot, and
For
and
sure.
so, you know, I think that's hard because you feel like you have to keep up with everybody. And like, it's like, but that's not the reality. Like, our community around here, there's not everybody has that, all the things,
For sure.
but there's so it's hard. It's like, it's not the easiest community to grow up in, I would say.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And then what advice would you give people in need of treatment but are bound by the sort of the negative stigma of society?
What advice would I give? Sorry, Daisy. Daisy,
She's so cute. She's so cute.
She's like my little, she's definitely my little ESA. Just a
I
minute,
love it.
Daisy. What advice would I give to someone who's reluctant to seek treatment because of the stigma?
Yes, but are bound sort of the negative stigma of society.
I think it's scary to be vulnerable for people. And that I think is one of the hard parts of getting someone to say, go talk to a therapist, because
sure.
I think if you have too much pain that you're carrying, and it's like scary to have to like open that vault and like let someone like let those feelings out and let someone in and like really share those things. So yet I think it's also so freeing, really. I mean, it's just important to be able to feel like you can be seen and heard. So
for sure.
One thing I would say that I have certainly learned is like validating feelings is really an important part of like interpersonal relationships. So, everybody wants to feel like their feelings are real and valid, and they are. Yeah. Everybody's feelings are valid. And so I think one thing that I've learned is to try to make sure that when I talk to let's say Caitlin, I'm not just, when she shares something with me, I don't just go back to her and say, well, here's what I think you should do, or like give her unsolicited advice. That's not what she wants. Really, I kind of learned that I'm supposed to like almost repeat back what she just says to me.
For sure.
And then say, and then stop and kind of let her know that this is what I heard you say almost. And then I can stop and say, like, do you want some advice, or do you want me to, kind of ask, like, so.
Exactly. And some people want to listen, like some people just want someone to listen rather than to give advice. And I think that goes for any circumstance, whether it's mental health or not. Just the idea that when you constantly are giving people advice and having them, well, this is what I think, or this is what you need to do, instead of them, that's not what they want. They just needed someone to listen to them and just know that like their feelings are valid and that what they're feeling is like valid.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like Caitlin actually has struggled. I think going to Parsons set her back a lot. And I did not realize how depressed she was while she was there. Going, break the whole Henry situation. I think all of that was really hard for both of them. But I think that she is sort of, still figuring herself out. So
for sure. And I think a new environment, transferring from Parsons to Miami, is so, like, a new environment can do so much too, though, in the aspect of, I know that I've seen so many instances with my friends and just other people that I know that once they move into a new environment, it just sort of mellows out. I mean, I know that I was so on edge over the summer and just my anxiety was at an all-time high. That's when I received my medication and everything. And then once I came and actually was settled in and like got my routine and kind of was like, okay, so like this is how everything's going to go. And that just helped so much. Just changing my environment completely helped tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, she's living in an apartment off campus this year, so that's new and different for her, which I think is nice. She likes to cook. I do think what you just said, the word routine, I think having a routine is actually really important, especially for people who struggle with mental illness. And so trying to have a consistent routine, and I think actually being busier is usually better. Like, if you have too much downtime on your hands, then I think it's. Oh, do I have to do something with the sound?
Oh, I think it's still going. Okay. I don't know it. Yeah, I think something. Oh, wait, then I think yours is on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes. I hope that did not just delete everything.
But I hope not, but let me know if you did. Yeah, so having more of a routine and staying busier and not having too much downtime to like
For
sit there and
sure.
like, yeah,
Muddle
that's
in
all
your
important.
thoughts. For sure.
Self-care, again, like showering, like basic self-care, showering, hydrating, nutrition, all of these things are so important. I don't know that we were on that topic, but
Oh no, for sure. And also just the idea of like it all comes back to the idea of just like taking care of yourself before you take care of others. I think that especially people who are so compassionate and empathetic of others, like I know some of my friends just always want to help, but then they don't take a step back to reflect on, okay, well, I need help right now. Like I'm stressed. My
yes,
anxiety is at an all-time high right now.
yes, that was me.
No,
It was
that
me
makes
working so
100%
hard on
sense.
Pause for Pet. All the things that I was doing for so long, and I was very, again, I'm very passionate about this. It's very close to my heart. Caitlin and Patrick were basically walking parallel lives, and that's why I got to be so close with Franzi in particular. And their stories are different. The way
For sure.
Patrick's story ended, and so I threw myself into the work, and I think it woke me up from my PTSD, but I also I overdid it, and
Yeah,
so I've had to, yes, I'm like kind of taking a step back myself right now, and I'm trying to check all. Now that I've turned
for
50, I
sure.
have all these things. My body decided
Yes,
it's gonna stop working, so I'm like, you guys gotta kind of figure out, get some other people
for
on board
sure.
to handle some things while I go and take care of
Exactly.
getting
And that
my
doesn't,
health checked off and all these
and it
stuff.
all comes back to the same idea that you can't help others once you help yourself. So Pause for Patrick definitely will benefit from you doing that, and even welcoming other people to come and help too. But especially like once
Sure.
you are in such a great state of mental health, then you'll be able to help more actually with Pause for Patrick rather than continuing to push yourself when your mental health could be at an all-time low.
Right. And I did find when I was not originally doing our marketing communications when I joined the board, and it's a long story, but once I took over our social media accounts actually for a good chunk of time there. And while I enjoyed talking to our clients and I like writing, I'm an emotional writer, all of that. But personally for me, like it was really time consuming running the social media. And
For
I
sure.
don't want to have to be on social media all day long, every day. Um, even for a cause that I love and support so greatly,
For sure.
it's a big time suck, and so personally I found that it's a lot. So it's like
Yeah.
I think there are people who do it professionally for a reason, because it's a lot of work.
For sure. And also working with an organization that is surrounded by mental health, that's definitely such a positive because you're then reminded to take a step back and sort of look at your own mental health and be like, okay, so I might need to work on this a bit before I get back and sort of start back into the process.
Right. Yeah. And Franzi, Romer, and Steve and Mags and Ben, this is their organization. It's their vision. It's their um, they know what they're doing. They know how they want to do it. And my background is in marketing communications. I think I told you actually. But I was in my work experience was a corporate environment.
Okay.
It was not for profit. So, I think for someone who's not as close, I'm not Patrick's mom. So like, there are things about it that I would probably do a little bit differently in terms of how we
Okay.
communicate our messages, because I think a lot of we have it's a multi-level like missions. We're trying
Okay.
to do a lot of things. So it's sometimes hard to communicate to
For
people
sure.
outside of the organization, like people who've never heard of it before. It's a lot to have to explain to someone.
Oh,
So,
for sure. And
I
someone
do
who
think
also
you
doesn't
said it
have
at the
an,
beginning at that.
well, and
Yeah.
just someone
Well,
who
you
doesn't
said at the
have a,
beginning, like the fact that we're using dogs.
exactly. And
Are
just
we
someone who
talking, is it
also,
like delayed?
yeah, I think it's delayed. But and how you were talking about how someone who might not have experience with mental health too, it's just such a great thing for someone to be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's because of COVID, I think there's even, way more people now who need help. And um, it's a real illness. It's a real um, struggle for people a lot. And, you know, again, adding the love of an animal any which way you can get it, or just seeing again a video or a picture of animals, like there's your body creates hormonal responses to that, and
For sure.
that's very positive. So
That's amazing.
yeah, I
Well,
think it's
thank you.
really powerful.
It's so powerful. And especially the, again, I'm just going to reiterate the whole idea of just an animal's relationship with a human is so much different than human to human contact, which is just so amazing.
Well, Dan Magler, our social worker who's on our board and one of our, heroes
I
at
love
Lake Forest High
him.
School, he kind of said, Patrick actually taught him a lot about, that the human to animal connection is truly more powerful than any,
For
therapist could ever provide. And that's not a made up thing. So,
Oh, 100%.
yeah. And again, that statistic with 11 years, it taking 11 years for people to like really actually get treatment, or that's a long time to go. That's a long time. And especially if it starts when you're an adolescent, and, to get through those middle school years and those high school years and transitioning off to college, transitions of any kind are hard.
Are very hard.
So, our pets.
They're there with us through it
all
all.
of those. And yeah.
For sure.
And the testimonials that we get from some of our clients are just, their words are their words, and I don't make those things up, and the impact that it's had on them is remarkable. So,
oh my gosh, I bet. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much.
We would love to have you join our junior board.
I would absolutely love that.
School.
I would absolutely.
Kids from school.
Yes, I would absolutely love to. Definitely, if there's any new information that comes out about it, I'd love to hear about it, because that's something I would definitely be interested in.
Well, good. I'm so proud of you, and happy that you're happy. Much. And when I met Valentina, they were saying you're at your sorority or something, and like, I don't know.
I love it.
I would think that you're.
Yes,
I'm sure you're in a happy place.
I've loved it so far. Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to let me interview you for this project. I'm hoping that it's the ending part before that awkward pause saved. But if not, I'll contact you or something. But thank you so much again.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you thought of me, and it's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.